Well, this is quite a collection of verses we have lifted out of Luke for our consideration today. Most weeks I feel like the text that is assigned by the lectionary that I use is like a buffet, and there's a temptation to try to put too much on the plate for preaching. When I looked at the texts this week, it felt more like slim pickings, and not very appetizing ones at that. These are difficult readings. In the first part of our reading for today, disaster is on the minds of some people who come asking Jesus about Galileans who were brutally killed by the governor. And then 18 people who died when a tower fell on top of them. Where we might expect Jesus to have words of comfort, he seems, a little cranky in his response. Maybe they're asking the question to turn Jesus' anger on the empire, on Pilate, who murdered these people. If that's what they want, their plan backfires on them. Or maybe Jesus seems to think that they're trying to make someone else's sin seem worse than their own sin. In other words, well, this must have happened to these people because they did something terrible, right, Jesus? Jesus doesn't give them the answer they want to that question either. He says, no, their sin isn't worse than anybody else's sin. Misfortune isn't doled out on the weight of one person's sin compared to another person's sin. Jesus seems to be saying that disaster happens because the weight of sin is cumulative and crushing for all people everywhere. Well, Jesus' words might be true, but they don't seem very pastoral or very comforting to the folks who come to ask. Then Jesus tells this parable about a fig tree. And we might wonder if Jesus is alluding to himself as the man who, looking for fruit and finding none, is ready to chop down the barren tree. Remember that in Matthew's gospel, a hungry Jesus comes upon a barren fig tree and he curses it until it withers. Earlier in Luke's gospel, we see Jesus grow short-tempered when the disciples are unable to cast an evil spirit out of a boy. Jesus spends most of chapter 12 spewing dire warnings and not-so-veiled threats at certain Pharisees who reject his teachings. Jesus wants results. Instead, the disciples still ask stupid questions. Crowds come and they want a quick fix, a quick cure for their problems, but then they just leave and go back to life as usual. Troublemakers dog Jesus at every turn, criticizing his every word and move. Could frustration be provoking Jesus to see 3 years of ministry as a failure? Is he so frustrated that he wants to abandon his ministry, to chop it off at the roots? We skip several verses in chapter 13 until we come to that hour, the very hour when Jesus has the perfect opportunity to change direction. Jesus already knows that his cousin John the Baptist has been beheaded by Herod. And now some Pharisees have come to warn Jesus that Herod is after his head too. Get out of Herod's territory, they caution. Run away. Jesus has every reason to be afraid. These are not made-up threats. This is real. But he does not give in to the temptation. Go and tell that fox, Herod, he says, that I'm casting out demons and curing the sick, until I finish my work. Then I will be on my way. It seems to me like this temptation to fear actually seems to strengthen Jesus' resolve to do the healing, liberating work that he came for. And then he will carry on to Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Even the mention of the holy city moves Jesus from resolve to sadness. Jesus knows that the city and the people that he most hopes to save will likely not receive him. Perhaps it will even be the death of him. Jesus cries out in a lament. He laments for the city who refuses to be gathered under the wings of the mother hen, even as the fox prowls around the edges of the pen. This is not the Jesus we expect after the brilliant infilling of God's glory that we saw on the Mount of Transfiguration just 2 weeks ago. Today's Jesus seems short-tempered, frustrated, snarky, sad. There is no harvest to show from the tree that he has hung his life upon, only a waste of good soil. There are no children gathered under his wings, only denial and desolation and an unending landscape of suffering. Today's Jesus is tragically, passionately, beautifully human. He has turned his face to Jerusalem, but in sharp contrast to Psalm 122, his heart is not leaping for joy. He's groping his way there, wishing that it were easier or more fulfilling, or at least more productive to do God's work. Our theme for Lent is journey. And I am imagining the pilgrims who walk the 500-mile Camino de Santiago from the mountains in France to the coast of Spain. It's an ancient pilgrimage route. I love to travel, so I can imagine the excitement and the anticipation of beginning the journey with high hopes of freedom and grandeur and success and spiritual enlightenment. I can also imagine the crushing weight of a backpack that is filled with too many worldly possessions, things that seemed essential at the start, but that have to be abandoned one by one as shoulders grow sore. I can imagine stomach bugs and blisters that are anything but liberating. I can hear the echoes of the naysayers back home who think you are irresponsible or frivolous. I can almost feel the exhaustion on a friendless, rainy day at mile 300 with 200 miles still to go. That makes you wonder whether those naysayers were right after all. I can also imagine the journeys of refugees who leave their homes in search of safety, or immigrants who travel in search of opportunity. Theirs too is a journey that begins with hope, with anticipation of a new life that is better than the old. But harsh realities often set in quickly. Immigration officials who are none too helpful in securing the necessary paperwork. dangerous passage on rafts or by smugglers. Years spent in camps, or maybe cramped into a small apartment with multiple other families. Angst about finding a job that pays the bills, coupled with a longing for the familiar sounds and smells and tastes and customs of home. I can imagine looking at my children and feeling the tug of despair, wondering whether that better life that I imagined would ever become real. Have you been there? Are you there now? Can you think of a time when you set out with grand plans and lofty intentions, good plans that seemed in keeping with God's plan, only to find yourself tired and empty and afraid of failure? Maybe you got stuck, or you wandered off course, or maybe the threats were too real and the victory too far afield. Today, Jesus is more human than we typically picture him. His passion is terribly frustrated on every front. Perhaps he is tempted to abandon, to forsake his mission, to forsake the desecrated temple of earth, our desolate cities, our barren hearts. Perhaps he struggles with a crisis of faith. Perhaps this terribly human Jesus is exactly the Jesus that we need to accompany us on our own journeys that begin with excitement and conviction, but wind into pits of despair and frustration, discontent, or cynicism. This might be just the Jesus we need to walk the journey with us. In the midst of faith-crushing realities, God is the ever-present gardener who shows up in that parable of the fig tree, who shows up and says to Jesus and to us, "Let it be for a while. Give me just a little more time to fertilize the tree, to tend the path that you are walking." In the midst of these paralyzing threats, God empowers with just enough strength for today. I imagine my own efforts at running. Once a year or so, I set off to try to be a runner. As I start to train, it's hard. And sometimes I think, okay, if I can just make it to that fire hydrant up there, then maybe I can take a breath. And from the fire hydrant, I think, if I can just make it to the stop sign down the block, then maybe I'll have enough energy. Maybe I'll have enough energy just to get to the stop sign. Maybe Jesus did not know how he would make it to Jerusalem, or how he would endure the difficulty that would face him there. But he knew with God's help that he could heal a woman today and cast out a demon tomorrow. And between tomorrow and Jerusalem, he would rely on God's Spirit, on God's grace, on God's fertilizer, on God's manure. This is a kind of small t transfiguration that happens when we walk in the way of Jesus. It seems minor and insignificant compared to those grand moments of transfiguration and revelation that we have on the mountaintops of life. Maybe we even risk missing it. But here is the promise that God's life force will enliven the roots of our calling, that God's creation hope will fertilize the bloodstream of human possibility, that God's wings will gather and protect God's children from the foxes that threaten us. The road might be long, and the end might not be exactly what we expect. But our God is the keeper of the orchard, the mistress of the barnyard, and our God is far from done. It's right here on the narrow, rocky, troubled path. Here is the ground of revolution. May the very human Jesus be your companion through the pathways of despair. May you cry out in lament when the way grows dim and you have to feel the path when you cannot see it. May God's grace fertilize your soul just enough to strengthen and sustain your work for today. And may you trust the keeper of the orchard, the mistress of the barnyard, for the future that she has promised in the shelter of her wings. May it be so. Amen.